Hi, everybody. I'm Matthew Kaufman alongside DJ Henry. This is the Kaufman's Corner for Rebel Recap. DJ, what makes you want to work harder as a wrestler?
A lot of dreams, a lot of goals, a lot of ambitions. When I walked into Howell High School, I didn't know what I wanted to do with wrestling. And then around my sophomore year, I made a decision that I wanted to go be a state champ. So once that happened, it became, instead of just wrestling for fun, it was make sacrifices and spend as much time as you can in the room so that you can improve your craft. And it's taught me a lot.
Now, I know you've done or you did karate when you were younger. Has karate helped you any way to where you are now being a wrestler and being a leader?
That's a pretty complicated question. On the surface, no, because when you look at guys who do karate, it's a lot of bouncing around and kicking and punching, none of which has anything to do with wrestling. But one thing that I will say is that karate helps develop the fast twitch muscles in your lower legs. So I'm a lot more explosive off of my calves, off of my hamstrings, and it helps me to pull off shots like double legs through people from far away. I would say a lot of that is from karate, and then the other thing is that catching guys coming in or catching guys moving to the side and watching their footwork is very prevalent in karate. So my timing on the wrestling mat and my ability to cut angles and shoot shots from the outside and catch people slipping, for lack of a better term.
Now, having what you have as inside that gym, when it's electric in there, does that push you a little bit more, push you a little farther, get you more hyped up for your matches, or even during your matches?
I like this question. So what a lot of people don't realize about energy is it's an equalizing factor. When you're in the middle of the mat, spotlight's on you, team score is tied, and you need to pull off a big pin to win the match, and you're up against a kid that's just as good as you, that's when the equalizing factor comes into play. When you're out on the mat and everybody's screaming, it's a lot harder to focus and have confidence in what you've been training in the room, what you've been preparing to do, because the stakes are high. And so the reason I do love that energy is because if you're one of those people that gives it 50, 60, 70% in the room and has holes that you need to fill, but you're not working with your 100% effort to fill those holes, then when you get out into the room and everybody's screaming, shouting, jumping up and down, chanting, whatever, those are the things that you're going to be focusing on. You're not going to be focusing on how am I going to get this guy down? What am I going to do? How am I going to score this big point for the team or whatever? You're going to be focusing on, holy crap, I'm super tired right now. I don't know if I can continue to push through this. And when you start giving it 100% in the room and you see that mental shift start to happen to where you're starting to think about how I can beat this guy when you're tired, I think that's where a lot of the glory in wrestling is and in that energy is. So I do love that, and it does get me pretty fired up.
Now, looking back, you're a senior this year. Looking back to the seasons that you've had previously, what has been your favorite moment?
I think it's pretty implicit that my favorite moment from this season is placing at states, obviously. Winning that last blood round match. A blood round is if you win, you place. If you lose, you're done. So winning that match and hearing my mom jumping up and down and screaming in the crowd. There's 5,000 people in this arena. I win that last match, and the only thing I hear is my mom jumping up and down and screaming, "Ah, you did it! You did it!" So that was my favorite moment because it was the culmination of all of the hard work. Even my freshman year when I was only into wrestling, that factors in too. So for my sophomore and junior and senior year, when I was skipping out on hanging out with people, when I was skipping out on going to parties, when my grades were dropping, I was making all these sacrifices. That moment right there, seeing my mom screaming up and down, going back up in the stands and hugging my dad who's bawling his eyes out, that's what makes all those sacrifices worth it.
Now, you mentioned your mom and dad being there. What does that mean for you? How special is that for you to have them as excited as they are? As you mentioned, your dad bawling his eyes out. I mean, how special is it for you?
It's everything. It's absolutely everything. What a lot of athletes don't realize is that your family, if they want you to succeed, is damn near just as invested as you are. So I got a mom who's, what's the term? She's a medical device sales rep. She commutes all over the freaking country being a representative for certain different medical devices. Like, I mean, I can't name the examples, but you understand the point. She's very driven and she's constantly devoting a lot of her time to her craft. My father's a cameraman. He commutes to New York City damn near every day and spends hours there working so that he can put food on the table. They take time away from both of their respective careers and both of their respective downtimes that they need for themselves to get me to practice, to get me to the private lesson that I need, to get me to the physical training facility, to come out and watch my matches and show their support. They do a very, 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 very great job making it apparent that they care about me and they want me to succeed. So having them there and having their support in the face of the things that I mess up, in the face of when I don't hold my end up of the bargain, like not having my grades up. I'm a kid and I mess up. And they love me unconditionally enough to continue to support my goal through that. So when I achieve that goal and I gratify them and they get to be there and witness what all those sacrifices culminated to, it's everything.
Now, you mentioned they bring you to private lessons. They do this and they do that. Is your preparation different for just a regular day of school compared to when you have wrestling? Do you eat different foods in that way?
Yes and no. It's not a spontaneous shift. It's a gradual shift. So when I first walk into school, it's the first day of school. I'm walking around with a bag of Cheetos in my hand. I'm getting school lunch every day. My habits aren't necessarily the most conducive to my success, but as the season starts to draw nearer and nearer, I have to get out of the mental habits that are going to get me to want those Cheetos. I'm not preparing differently for a day when I have practice. I'm just preparing for the season and then allowing those habits to continue all the way through so that at the end I can have that goal achieved.
Now, I know a lot of athletes have, kind of a pregame ritual in a way, in a sense that you could say. Do you have maybe a certain food that you eat? I know a lot of guys, a lot of athletes eat a certain food before, listen to a certain song, maybe watch a certain TV show. Do you have anything like that before a match?
Well, you'd actually be surprised how many athletes don't have that. It's a baffling thing, especially in a state as competitive as New Jersey. You see athletes at the top of the food chain in wrestling and in any other sport that don't have a routine. But for me, I would definitely say that having a routine has been paramount. Having a routine before I go out onto my matches makes it so that every match is consistent, so that I'm feeling the same just about every time I take the mat. I have a dynamic warm-up that I'll do before I wrestle. It's a lot of standard stuff, so like high knees, butt kicks, soldier kicks, whatever. And as far as my diet, it's not what I eat before my match, it's what I'm eating in the days prior. So like the night before I have a big tournament, I'll have some pasta so that I have some good whole carbohydrates. I'll make sure that I'm good on water so that I can sweat, so that my body will cool down and so that my blood will circulate at a rate that doesn't, have me dead at the end of the second period. And just little stuff like that. I mean, it gets a little bit more complicated than that, especially with weight cutting. But I would definitely say it's advantageous to have a routine, and I'm working my best to keep mine consistent.
Now, what makes wrestling, you said you've been wrestling now for a while. What makes it
7 years.
wrestling at Howell so special for you?
It's the family. And I know that's a bit of a stereotypical answer. I know that you ask anybody at any school that question, an answer that sounds along those lines is probably going to come out of their mouth. But it's a little different at Howell. So in the beginning of our season, I want to say we were a 5-6 wrestling team. We were losing to all kinds of teams that we should not have been losing to. Our team mentality wasn't there. So guys would go out and they'd be wrestling for themselves, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but the concept of wrestling for each other was lost on them. So what I mean by that is your team is down 3 points and you need to go get a major decision to win and you're up against a good kid. Guys become a lot more concerned with winning the match for what it means for them, and then putting forth that extra effort to go get that major decision and get that one more point and secure that win becomes lost on them. What I say before about how energy is an equalizing factor. Guys get out there and the crowd is cheering and they get nervous, and then suddenly the concept of wrestling for each other and wrestling for this family doesn't mean as much to them. With Howell, around halfway through the season, we turned that around. And the way that we turned that around is by constantly getting on each other in the room, constantly pushing each other to work harder. I would love to take a lot of credit for it as the captain, but it really wasn't my doing. I mean, I played a part in starting to get these kids motivated, starting to get these kids to want to push each other, but really what happened was I just put the foot in the door. Me and JJ and Sebastian, and we just put the foot in the door by starting to get into these kids to get them to work hard. Once the team started reaping the benefits of being there for each other and pushing each other, now everybody wants it. And our work habits became consistent in the room to a point where we were pushing each other harder than any team that I can name. And so once that happened, the 6-6 record turned into a 29-7, and we took home a sectional title. Tell me a team that's 6-6 at the beginning of the season in any sport is going to go win a high-level title like that. It doesn't happen very often. That little switch is very, very hard to flip even on a professional level. So the fact that we were able to come together as a whole team and flip that switch on a high school level in a mixed bag team full of kids that are in wrestling for entirely different reasons. Some people are just there to have fun. Some people are there because they want us to be a state champion. We got everybody in between, and we managed to come together as a team and flip that switch and start wrestling for each other and start going out there and going to war for each other because we wanted to win as a team. It's an amazing thing. So I think that was my favorite part of this season, was that we were a family.
Well, that's going to do it here for Rebel Recap's Kaufman's Corner interview. I'm Matthew Kaufman. That's DJ Henry. DJ, thank you so much for your time.
Appreciate you.